Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to a very special evening. Ireland West Airport and Midwest Radio are delighted to present our special live 30th anniversary Gala concert.
Monsignor Horan, Monsignor Horan, Monsignor Horan, every time he has built us Connacht Airport that will last us for all time. Up the Monsignor!
Good morning, this is the Shamrock 4962. We're passing 7,000 feet for 4,000 feet at 1031.
Shamrock 4962, Connacht Tower, good morning. Welcome to Connacht Regional Airport.
What way will you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as a good, kind, honest parish priest who did his best both in spiritual things and in the temporal things for his people everywhere he walked. I want no more than that.
And now, please welcome your host for tonight, Tommy Marin.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and a very good evening, and you're very welcome tonight to Ireland West Airport in Knock, and no fog in sight. Isn't that wonderful? On the hills of Bamacogue, we're here to celebrate 30 years. We've been speaking to so many of the audience members as they made their way in tonight, and to a man and to a woman, everybody said, is it really 30 years since this amazing building, this wonderful piece of infrastructure was built? The reality is, yes, it is 30 years, but tonight we're going to remember it in a nostalgic way and in a practical way in terms of the past, the present, but most importantly, the future. And we hope that you're going to enjoy our balanced program of music, nostalgia, and chat. We're going to begin, ladies and gentlemen, with a bit of chat with four men who actually have a lot to say and who covered the events of Ireland West Airport Knock in more ways than one. You can give them a round of applause when I finished introducing who they are. Former editor and MD of the Western People, Terry Riley, the Chief Steward of Knock Shrine, Tom Neary, the man who built the airport, Frank Harrington, and RTE's Jim Fahey. Let's hear it for them all. Good evening, Frank. You take a seat right down there. Jim, looking great. Thank you very much, Frank, Jim there, and of course, here's Tom. Good to talk to you, Tom, and of course, Terry as well. And I must say, they're all looking extremely well, if you don't mind me saying so. We'll start at the very beginning, because Terry, not alone did you cover the life of this airport and the life of Monsignor Horan, you also wrote the book, On a Wing and a Prayer, and of course the musical as well.
With you.
With me, yes indeed, but thank you for that. He was an amazing man, and I know you get very passionate when you talk about him.
He was an extraordinary man. Could you tell me in the audience, any man in the 1980s who could have built an international airport on a foggy, boggy hill, other than James Horan? You couldn't. That's how high he was.
What did he have that made him so special?
He was a businessman, he was a builder, his father was a small builder. He had been doing things like thatching cottages in Connemara, like building forests, levelling roads, getting post offices, building the Basilica to bring the Pope to Ireland before people thought it was possible, outraging the church by spending 1.7 million, which they said would never be paid back, and he had paid it back before the Basilica was dedicated. He brought the Pope. Having brought the Pope, he was a massive figure with an attitude, because he had done the impossible, and he could dream the impossible dreams and he could make them happen. And he was determined. Remember, he kept saying, I'm an old man in a hurry. Now, when you get to his age, and when you get to my age, and when you get to people in the audience's age who are around that age, you know exactly what he means. So much to accomplish, so few years left. And he went for it like a greyhound after a hare. And he wasn't going to be put off. He saw the goal, as Archbishop Neary said earlier on. He saw the goal, he went for the goal, he got over the line.
You drove up here tonight. What was going through your mind as you drove in here?
Wonderment, astonishment. Every time I come here, I'm astonished, because what has happened here through the people who raised the money, 4 million, the ordinary people of Ireland raised 4 million for it. The government put up 9.6 million. He had a legion of followers, and he set it up in trust for the people of Connacht. What a present to give to the people of Connacht. People followed him. Look at it, 150 jobs here now, 900 jobs, 9,000 jobs supported in the communities, and 130 million worth to the community every year in the throughput. And governments say we can do nothing, or we must do something for the West of Ireland or region areas. Why the hell don't they get behind something like this and build it up and out?
Tom, you knew the Monsignor probably better than most. Describe him for me.
Well, I worked very closely with the man for 23 years. And I mean very closely, because we did an awful lot of things together. I helped him in particular during the turbulent years when this airport was being constructed, because I often drove him to meetings and to fundraising events. We wrote articles for the papers. We answered some nasty letters that were on the papers as well, attacking the airport. And overall, I think he needed support at that time, because it was a more difficult task than people realized. And I think eventually it told a tale on the man himself.
Did you ever argue with him, Tom? Was there ever a thing he wanted to do that you said, Monsignor, with respect, that's madness?
Well, I suppose he used me in many ways to kind of test his ideas, and he felt I might have some opinion. Most of the time, you would have to agree with the man. Now, you could disagree with them, but he would come back and he would ask you the question again and again until maybe you would reconsider it. But I must say his judgment was very good. I think as a man, he had an awful lot of good qualities. He was a man of faith. He never neglected his religion in the middle of it all. He was a man of hope, great courage, determination. He had wonderful vision, a great sense of humor. He was a countryman. He always regarded himself as a country person. He identified with rural Ireland, and he loved rural people, and he loved the social side of things as well, mixing with them. He loved to sing, to play the accordion. He had the great ability to switch off, and he could relax in the evening, and he could be top of the form the next morning again. He had a wonderful organizational ability. He never went to bed at night without taking down his diary. He had everything mapped out, and the next day he would tackle into it. And in that way, he said always to me that that's the way not to waste time. That's the way to cover what you have to do. He was wonderful that way. He had very definite ideas on lots of things. He said party politics was the ruination of the west of Ireland, because the parties spend most of their time squabbling and fighting amongst themselves when they should be helping the West as a unit. And he also felt that if he was ever going to build an airport, it would have to be of a suitable size, a size that would be adequate to take every kind and type of aircraft. Otherwise, he said, it won't be economic, it won't make money, it will fail. He's proved right in that, because the small airports today, you could say, they're dead and gone.
Yeah. Okay,
there was another very strong point as well. He felt because the west of Ireland was on the edge of Europe, it would have no chance without some proper linkage with Europe. And he maintained that the way to do it would be to have a good, decent-sized airport, and that would link the West, not just with Europe, but with the rest of the world. And again, I think he has been proved right in that.
He sure has. Jim, you know, I suppose he had a great time for the media, and he knew that the media, he could coerce and use the media to his advantage. Can I ask the question, was it a setup? Monsignor Horan, can I ask you, what are you doing here?
Absolutely not, because we had come to Knock in, say, 1980, when the airport was being talked about. There was a lot of talking, a lot of debate, and nobody really thought it was going to happen genuinely. But early in 1981, we went to Knock one evening, not really sure what was going to be, because Monsignor said, come and talk to me about it. And we weren't really sure, and we started to do an interview on that day around the Basilica. And suddenly he said, but we've started. And we said, you've what? He said, we've started, would you like to see it? Now, stupidly, we hadn't asked him the moment we arrived what's going on. And we wanted to do a quick interview with him just outside the Basilica. And he said, come and see it. So, of course, we just jumped in the cars at an invitation like that. We thought, suddenly, my God, is he being for real? So, in fact, he was. He brought us up to the site, and Frank Harrington's diggers and trucks were at work. And we just could not believe our eyes. So we said, quick. It was getting a little bit late in the evening, and we said, come and talk to us. And we asked him that question of what in God's name is going on here. And he said, well, I mean, can't you see what's going on? We're building an airport. In fact, he wasn't. As Frank will tell you, he was building the road into the airport. But for all intents and purposes, this was the beginning of the airport. And that's the memory of it, or the image of it, which has gone down through all of the years.
That was called a priestly lie. It was just a small little slip of the tongue. You got to know him really well over the years. Yeah. Yes. And he trusted you.
I think he did, to an extent. I mean, there would be times when we would sort of disagree over what he would tell you and what he wouldn't tell you, and what maybe you knew was going on, and he wasn't prepared to tell you the full story at the time. But yes, it did. I mean, I just regarded myself as being extremely fortunate. in a broadcasting life, you're very fortunate if during, say, 30, 40 years as I was, into your orbit comes a person who is so utterly different, who is so engaging. I mean, sparks flew off Monsignor Horan. Wherever he was, there was excitement surrounding him. There was controversy, there was colour, but he was driving on. And I think somebody may have said it earlier on this evening, that he dreamed this airport into existence. I think at times he sang it into existence because he travelled the world. And there was a little video shown earlier on. And some of my best memories of Monsignor are on days when he would launch into song just to lift the spirits of people when things were maybe going you know, he was having difficulties. And there was a magical moment when the first flights were taking off, and the Monsignor was on the second plane, I think. There was the Eunice, the Canis, and I'm not sure what the third plane was. And he walked down the aisle in the aircraft and then turned around, and everybody started to sing, "For He's a Jolly Good Fellow." And he turned around and he looked, I suppose, with great delight in his heart, and he put his hand in the air and he said, "You're a wonderful people. You're a wonderful people." And that summed up his relationship with Mayo. I mean, I think Mayo people just fell in love with this iconic figure who had such drive, such energy, such foresight, was just never going to be derailed in what he set out to do. And he had that magical capacity. There is another image of him which I treasure, really. On one occasion, we were filming at the airport, and it was, yes, there was a little bit of mist, there was a little bit of rain, and suddenly a rainbow came out. And my cameraman grabbed the Monsignor by the arm and he said, "Quick, down the runway," and walked through it. So there is a shot that exists somewhere of Monsignor Horan walking through this rainbow with this 750 yards of runway that Frank had just finished being completed. And you see him. And this was a man who dreamed, and a rainbow appeared at that very moment. The heavens were saying, "Monsignor Horan, we are celebrating. We are hanging out our brightest colours for you tonight. Well done for sticking with it and bringing into existence this fantastic airport for the west of Ireland."
Finally, Jim, you know, he had a lot of high-profile, well-known, close confidants, some of them on stage here right now. But there were other people, I suppose, too, who helped him that maybe don't often get the public kind of credit they deserve.
Yeah, well, there were a little bunch of people in the early days. I mean, most people here will be familiar with them. I mean, his closest confidants in the early days were Jim Ryan, who was his aviation expert. Frank Harrington here, of course, was the man who was immensely significant. I don't know if people really know it, Frank, but you took a punt on Monsignor Horan. He said, "Let's get up there and let's start this. We don't have money. We really don't have full planning permission." And you bankrolled the first 6 months of Knock Airport. Something like £500,000 at the time. You kept this paid, you kept the work on trust in the hope that it would be there. So Frank Harrington was immensely significant. There were people like Ulick McAvady, who he provided the fuel farm at a time when this was very important, and maybe it wasn't, it could have been a stumbling block for the airport. I met earlier on tonight James and Mary O'Donoghue. These were hugely popular people, hugely significant people to whom an enormous debt of gratitude is due. I mean, in the toughest of days, after the project had been halted twice, first I think by Paddy Cooney and then by Jim Mitchell. And the Monsignor said, "Well, by God, that's not going to stop us. We're going to take off to the world." And Mary and James were down there somewhere, I imagine. They set off and they toured America, Philadelphia, and Boston, New York, Ohio, everywhere. And they came back with, I don't know, maybe £1 million. And on one of the best days, we were in the office with Mary, and this money was there. It was like a scene from a movie. There were envelopes being opened and all kinds of money tossing up. There were dollars, there were Australian dollars, there were pound sterling, there were yen, there were francs, there were Deutschmark. And Mary said to me that on one day, the best day was £90,000 came in to support the airport. And that was after, if I can tell you the story briefly, one journalist who had an immensely important part to play in internationalizing this story was a man called Morley Safer. He worked with CBS on the 60 Minutes program, which was an immensely popular and important current affairs program in the United States. He came here to interview the Monsignor, and they had this wonderful bantering session when all of these phrases Morley Safer said to him, "You're a wily old rascal." And he said, "No, no, no, I'm a simple country priest." He said, "You know, you're pulling the wool over the government's eyes." No, he said, I wouldn't be up to doing that at all. I'm an old man in a hurry. And so this was broadcast all over the English-speaking world, went to Australia. People in Cairns saw Monsignor, who had defied the government. Morley was presenting this in the lines that here is this elderly, remember, Monsignor James Horan was 70 years of age when he started this adventure. So here was this elderly priest in open defiance of the government, with little support, built an international airport on a hill. We won't describe the sort of meteorological circumstances surrounding this hill, but he was invited to Cairns in Australia as a result of that, and got an enormous reception and quite a substantial contribution from Australia. So he was a man whose mind worked like a master chess player. I mean, lots of people's minds work like you're playing drafts and they're going straight lines this way and that way. Monsignor James, the pieces moved around the board like chess pieces, and he was always almost one step ahead. Can I tell you the Charles Haughey story?
Yes.
Because P. Flynn, who's in the audience tonight, will relish this. The opening of the airport here was a shocking day. It was gale, it was hurricanes, it was just the worst imaginable day. Paul Durcan, the poet, had quite a significant role on that day. About 2 months previously, Paul got a strange phone call from Charlie's secretary saying, "Come in, I want to talk to you." So they had an hour conversation that rambled all over the place. As far as I know, and Pádraig Flynn can tell you later on, Pádraig was in an outer room waiting for this discussion to conclude. And at the very end, they talked about, Charles Haughey was asking, what kind of a monument could we create here? And eventually he came around to the point. He wanted Paul Durcan to write a poem. And Paul was taken aback by this. He said, "You are asking me, a Free State family, the mother and father from down the road, to come to an event which would be largely a Fianna Fáil kind of event, to write a poem." So he did. And on the day that they travelled down here, Paul was sent out to Kensealy, brought to Dublin Airport, got in the 7-seater plane with Charles Haughey, Mrs. Haughey, PJ Mara, and Brian Lenihan. And they're coming in here, and it is a horrific day. And the pilot is talking to and they're 5 minutes early. And the pilot says to Charlie Haughey, "What will we do? Will we circle or will we go straight in?" And Haughey said, "We'll go straight in." And so they landed, came off, and Paul got onto the platform that day. Charles Haughey, as you would have seen in a little video earlier, with this one snip of the scissors, declared it at the invitation of Monsignor Horan, the airport open. Paul Durcan recited an amazing poem that day in which he checklisted almost every town in County Mayo and every village. It was like a decade of the Rosary, but it was Our Lady of Bornalira, Our Lady of Ahagaur, Our Lady of Knockmore, Our Lady of Killawalla, and it was a terrible, dreadful day, but it was one of the highlights of that day.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Jim. Frank, would you do it again? You would, I suppose. You were looking blankly when Jim was saying that you bankrolled it for thousands, and I think you were saying to yourself, "God, did I?" You had a great relationship with the Monsignor, and you were one of his right-hand men.
That's right. Great relationship with him, surely. Yeah.
Do you miss him a lot?
Well, we do. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at it now, did you think to yourself, "God, how am I really going to do this?"
Well, I suppose you're right.
Yeah.
We started, and that was it. It was a big job at the time. And
was he a hard taskmaster? I mean, was he coming up and saying, "Look, move on here, Frank, time's moving on"?
Oh, he was a tough enough man to work for now, mind you. It was no soft now.
Yeah. But you delivered most of the time on time.
Oh, yeah. I was very good,
Yeah. Great. Well, listen, Frank says to me, "Give me a digger, but don't give me a microphone." And that's the way it is. But I can tell you something, it's always the quiet ones you have to watch. And I can tell you one thing, this airport wouldn't be here today without that man there. Fair play to you, Frank, for doing that. And thank you to Terry, to Tom, to Jim, and to Frank for sharing. There are so many people we have to talk to. We could talk to these lads for ages, but we do want to move on because tonight is all about various people and various things to do. And I'm delighted to introduce for you now a man who, I was going to say a young man, but he's not that young anymore. He comes from just down the road from the parish of Kilmactye. 25 years performing in all corners of the world, the UK, Ireland, Australia. He's even big in Japan, believe it or not. And he's been described as the voice of Ireland. And singing, actually, if you want to see Tommy in concert, he's going to be in Swinford Church on the 29th of July to officially open Sheamsa Straja. So watch out for that. But singing a poignant song for the night that's in it, The West's Awake. Would you welcome, please, Tommy Fleming. Well done. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
When all beside a vigil keep, the West asleep, the West asleep, alas and well may every weep, when Connacht lies in slumber deep, their lake and plain smile fair and free, mid rocks their guardian chivalry, sing all that man learned liberty, from crashing wind and lashing seas. That chainless wave and lovely land, freedom and nationhood demand. Be sure the great God never planned for slumbering slaves a home so grand. And later times saw deeds as brave, and glory God's Clonrickard's grave. Seeing all they died their lands to save, at Aughrim slopes and Shannon's waves. For often in O'Connor's land to triumph dashed each Connacht clan, and fleet as deer the Normans ran through Cushleave Pass and Ordrahan. And later times saw deeds this brave, yes, glory God's Clonrickard's grave. Seeing all they died their lands to save, at Aughrim slopes and Shannon's waves. And even when a vigil keep, the West asleep, the West asleep, alas and well may e'er be, when Connacht lies in slumber deep. But hark, a voice like thunder spake, the West's awake, the West's awake. Sing o'er all that England quake, we'll watch till death for Erin's sake. Sing o'er all that England quake, we'll watch till death for Erin's sake.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That is the great voice of Tommy Fleming there, and the West's Awake. As I say, Swinford, 29th of July. He's also in Paddy the Musical across Ireland in September and in the UK in November. Now, there are lots of people we will be talking to tonight, but there's some people who for various reasons can't be with us. And so we have a number of greetings during the course of this evening. Two very quick ones for you. In a moment, we are going to have the chairman of Ireland West Airport Knock, Joe Kennedy, who can't be with us tonight, unfortunately. But first, here's the Chief Executive of Midwest Radio, Paul Claffey, with a few words.
Hello, this is Paul Claffey. By golly, do I have some great memories of adventures I've had at Ireland West Airport in Knock over the last number of years. A lot of you will know I do music tours all over the world, but one of the great memories I have was the first trip that we did to the Caribbean with a flight direct from Knock. It was breakfast in Knock and dinner in the Caribbean. We did that not once, not twice, but about 5 times over, and it was a tremendous success. I will never forget the jumbo jet when it came in at that time to a very small Knock airport, and the excitement was absolutely terrific. Hundreds of people came from all over the place just to see the plane land, and by golly, how Knock airport has developed in the last 30 years. It is a credit to all, and I want to say particular tribute to the staff that are down there. The staff over the last number of years have been absolutely magnificent. It really is just like a home down there for me with all the flights I've done to different places down through the years. I want to sincerely thank all at Knock Airport for all their help and assistance down to the years. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful 30th anniversary and keep it going for another 30. God bless.
It's a fantastic achievement, the airport running so successfully over all those 30 years. We look forward to the next 30, but in the meantime I'd like to thank everybody that's been involved with the airport over all those years. I would like at this stage to thank especially Joe Gallo, our Chief Executive, who's doing a wonderful job here. I'd like to thank all my board members for all the support over the years, and I'd like especially to thank Brian O'Dwyer, the International Chairman of the airport, who's with you tonight on my behalf. He's flown all the way from New York. And thank you very much, Brian. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very, very much for being with us this evening. Again, apologies I can't be with you. God bless, Joe.
Jerry Glennon has a few interesting people to talk to in the audience. Over to you, Jerry.
Indeed we have, Tommy. We have some very interesting people indeed. And I want to start with this man here, Willie Joe Padden, Mayo footballing legend. I'm the last man to be talking about football, you'll be happy to know, but I have only 2 questions for you. And the year I want to go to Willie Joe is 1989. September 1989, to be more precise. Mayo versus Cork. We won't talk about the result, but what we'll talk about is that flight home. Do you remember that flight home where you were flown from Dublin back into Knock Airport that evening? Have you got memories of that and those thousands of people that gathered around the airport that blustery Monday evening?
Well, absolutely. I think it was a brilliant occasion, and being from Mayo team to fly up first and to represent the county in the All-Ireland final, such a big occasion, and played the game. Unfortunately, the result didn't go the way that we would have hoped. But getting on the plane again in Dublin and flying back to Knock, and we know from the supporters that were there at the game, and that had travelled all the way and were as disappointed as we were. So we were kind of in a mixed probably mood as to what way, what was going to be the reception when we did get to Knock. But in fairness, just on the way in, and you could see out the window of the plane, is that the crowds of people that were lining up along the place, you'd swear that we had won it. It would have been great. I don't think it could have been any better if we did win it. But, it's the Mayo people again, I suppose, and that had lined up and said, well, these guys gave it their best, and we're certainly here to support them. And I think it was, it's one thing that will stick out in my mind. I will never forget it for as long as I'm on this earth. I think it was a just absolutely brilliant occasion.
Just as a matter of interest, how would you have come home if you did win it?
Well, I'm sure the plane would be delayed a couple hours anyhow, for sure.
It wouldn't have dampened the enthusiasm here in Knock.
No, I'm sure it wouldn't, and I'm sure probably the same people would still be here because, as we know, how passionate Mayo people are about their football. So I have no doubt if it took us to Wednesday to get back, if we had the Sam Maguire, they would still be here.
You'd have walked it. One more question. What's going to happen on Sunday?
I think that Mayo will win the game. Obviously, you can't underestimate a team like London. There's a lot of young Irish people gone over there, and they've joined different clubs, and they're representing London now. But at the end of the day, I think that Mayo are so experienced. They're around the block now for the last 7 or 8 years at the very, very top level, and I think that certainly they will have enough in the tank there just to get out of that one.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mayo sporting legend Willie Joe Padden. Thank you very much, Willie Joe. Nice to talk to you. Let's move to Niall Gibbons. Niall is the CEO of Tourism Ireland. I know, Niall, you're a busy man because you were also guest speaker at the dinner earlier on. I won't ask you about your thoughts as guest speaker at the dinner, but what are your thoughts about this shining beacon on this hill this evening?
Well, I think it's tremendous tribute to the people here. The perseverance, determination, hard work has paid off. 30 years, but 750,000 passengers passing through the airport this year is an incredible achievement. When you think in its first year it had a few thousand. And to put it in perspective, I mean, tourism is a big driver of jobs across this country, and the regional dispersion is a big issue for us at the moment. But to have places like this makes the job all the more easier. So well done to Joe Gilmore and the whole team here. I think they've done a fantastic job. We have a lot of promotional campaigns running overseas at the moment with the likes of Aer Lingus, with Flybe, with Ryanair promoting Knock Airport. So long may it last. We look forward to working with them for the next 30.
So strategically, Ireland West Airport, very important for your plans.
No question about it. We've always said that direct, competitive, convenient access is critical. 85% of everybody that comes to this island is coming by air, and that isn't going to really change. And the nearer that we can deliver them to their destination, the better. And with the Wild Atlantic Way on the doorstep, it's got the biggest selling point that we have.
And can I say this as well? A little birdie tells me you had traffic issues coming out of Dublin. You had no such traffic issues coming into Ireland West Airport, Knock, right?
Actually, once we cross the Shannon, there's no traffic problems at all.
That's what we like to hear. Niall, thank you very much. It's good to have you with us. And I want to move on now to one more guest before we hand back to Tommy. And this is Mary Donoghue. Good night to you, Mary.
Good night.
I know that you and your husband have had a long association with Knock Airport, particularly from the fundraising point of view. How did you get involved?
That's true. When the government pulled the plug on the second part of the grant that they were giving the airport, we met Monsignor and we started to discuss and plan how we'd raise funds. So there was a lot of planning and discussion that went on with Monsignor, Tommy Neary, James and myself in his little sitting room up in the house, in the parochial house in Knock. And from that we started the Jumbo Quiz, which we raised a lot of money from, and thanks to all of this people who bought all those tickets many years ago for £10 ago. And subsequently after that, we did a postal thing into the doors and that too on post. And after that, we went to the States and we went around to maybe 10 or 12 cities in the States where we had previously set up with the aid of a wonderful lady out there called Attract O'Malley from Charlestown. And the first one was in Philadelphia, and then we went from there to New York, to Ohio, to Boston, to Cleveland, and so on. And then we came back, and Monsignor and his crew of merry men, along with one merry woman, went round to all the pubs in Mayo and sang and gathered all the money we could. And subsequently, the money came in, and as you saw on the piece on the film, that's what happened. But my abiding memory would be of the time that they flew to Rome. The first flight to Rome. And I was, at that stage, must have been 30 years ago, I had my youngest daughter, who is now 30, or just gone 30. The day before that, I was just talking to Jim Fahey this evening. I had Jim and his crew in for lunch, and then I went down to Sligo Hospital, had my daughter, and...
As you do.
As you do. And Monsignor rang me up and said, Mary, you must come with us tomorrow. And I said, I can't. And he said, bring her with you.
You know something? I think it was those lovely, which I think are green eyes of yours. They're like emeralds that had the Monsignor completely hypnotized.
I don't know. I don't think so. But one last thing I will say, and it's a little sad. Before he went to Rome with his group, I couldn't go, or James couldn't go, but I was standing at the little restaurant there at the door, and he was the last to board, and he came back and he caught my hand and caught it so tightly he squeezed the rings into my hand. And he never before, Monsignor would never say, well, thank you, thank you for this or that. He'd say, you did great, come on, we've got to get on now, do the next thing. So he didn't say that to me. He thanked me for 3 things, specifically in detail. And then he caught my hand again and he walked off. And I looked at him and I said, that's not Monsignor. And that's the last time I ever saw him.
God rest him. I notice one thing before I let you go, that you didn't reveal the 3 things. So I'm wondering, are they like the 3 secrets of Fatima?
No, they're not. Can I remember now? I remember Transamerica had come in here, and I did the reception for that, and we did it in the colours and so on and so forth, and we had about 400 people. And he said, that's what I want for Knock Airport. I want, this standard for Knock Airport, and I'd love to see this happening. And then he thanked me for, of course, the fundraising and the states and that kind of thing. I forget the exact 3, but it was around those 3 anyway.
Did your baby become a fundraiser or a pilot?
She's in Iceland tonight.
Oh, God bless her. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. Tommy, there's the first of our panels. It's over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Jerry. Now, we were just speaking there. I suppose in 30 years, obviously people are going to pass on, and there are people who are left to carry on the legacy of great people. And there are 3 people on this panel who are here because they were related to amazing people. Jimmy Horan, right to my left here, a nephew of the Monsignor. Jimmy, you're a much bigger man than the Monsignor was.
Yes, he was more like his father.
Yes.
I went with my grandmother. My grandmother was a very big, tall woman.
Mm-hmm. So but you were telling me earlier on, as a young fella, you were 26 when the Monsignor passed on.
That's right, yeah.
But you have great memories of him as a youngster.
Yeah, when we were young, I lived with my grandfather and grandmother, which is Monsignor's father and mother, and he used to come once a week. He would always bring goodies. He would go to Galway with himself and Father McHugh, golfing. He'd always come down in the evening, but we had to be gone in the evening because he wouldn't want us to hear what he was talking about to his father and mother. But he was very attached to his mother, and he'd call his mother out in the corridor and he'd be talking to him, or to her. So we didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah. And do you know now what he was talking about?
Well, he was telling her what he was planning on doing.
Yeah.
He was just after moving to Knock at the time, and he was talking about building this shelter for Knock. And he wanted to get all the electrical stuff and all that underground to make Knock more presentable for tourism and all that. Mm-hmm. So that's what...
Yeah. Did you think that sometimes he was over the top?
I don't know. You see, he used to come to our house once a week. We took him as an uncle. Now, there was one time in particular, he decided he was going to learn how to play the accordion. And the sisters in Knock was teaching him. So as it happened, I was learning the accordion with Martin Dunhull out nursing him, going to school. And my grandfather was a good accordion player. So my uncle decided, Monsignor, that he was going to come up to teach me how to play the accordion. So it was going on a while anyway, and I was getting fed up with it. But my grandfather wouldn't even told him. My grandfather was fed up listening to him as well, and my grandfather told him, get the box, he said, and yourself, and out. And don't come back in again. He said, you'll never make an accordion player. Yeah. So he went in, we didn't see him again for maybe a few weeks. He'd get vexed like that.
And he married you and your wife
yes, that's right,
the year before he died?
Yeah.
So that was nice. That was a nice memory.
Yeah, he married in 85, January 85. Yeah. He died the following August.
Did he ever give you a particular piece of advice that you've always remembered, or is there a particular memory of him?
He did. He said, if you get some goal into your head, make sure you keep going and it comes through. Always, he said, work at it. Never let it die down. So he was right.
He certainly walked the walk on that one, didn't he?
He did, surely, he did. Yeah. Because when he was young as well himself, when he was going to Maynooth, he decided that the people in Parsley, in Turin, where he was from, there was only 8 acres of a holding of land, and he decided that he was going to get the Land Commission to move some of the people, and which he did. Up, some of them went to Kilmaine, some of them went to the Midlands, Meath, and Westmeath, so it was in him that time.
Yeah. And somebody told me, I think one of his old cars is here tonight. Did you know that?
Yeah, my brother has the old car. He did it up. He restored it there a couple of years ago.
What is it?
Cortina.
What year?
SIZ. I don't.
But anyway, it says, it's in good condition.
Oh, it's like new car again.
He needed a good car because he travelled so much.
Well, he did, but he wasn't a great driver. As people in Knock would know, if you came out the gate, like if you were coming down the road, well, it was your tough luck if you kept going. And to be straight out, and he might be going down the road, he'd be looking back at the church at the same time. So if you were crossing the road,
Yeah. Or maybe looking into a house and saying, I wonder, have they any money?
Well, that could be it, yeah. That was always in it, yeah.
That was always
Yeah, that was always in it.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. Kieran Duffy is the son of the late Cahill, another very close friend of the Monsignors. Kieran, how well did you know the Monsignor, or did you know him much at all?
Oh, I did. I knew him very well. We used to go back to the parochial house on Sunday afternoon, and they'd have tea. I remember one Sunday afternoon, he had got a BMX bicycle from Gay Byrne on the Late Late Show the night before, and I was only maybe 12 or 13 years of age, and I was allowed to cycle around the hall, and they were inside having tea and talking about things, but he'd always have to go to say the 4 o'clock mass in the chapel.
Yeah.
But he was a good character, as I remember him as.
Yeah. I have to ask, how did he get the BMX bicycle from
Gay Byrne gave it to him to raffle for the airport to raise money.
Really?
For the airport at the time.
That was when he appeared on the Late
Late
Late Show?
Yeah, that
really,
night.
Yeah. And do you ever recall him telling you funny stories or singing or?
I don't recall him singing now, but they'd always have fun, you know, no matter how serious things were or how desperate things were at stages, they'd always have a joke and a laugh and a word in Irish, you know.
Very good. And your dad always thought so highly of him?
Dad thought he should have been a businessman more so than a priest. He thought he would have been a great businessman, you know. They got on very well. They were diverse in different ways, but there was a group of people there really that worked very well together. You know, the late Michael O'Malley and Seamus Monaghan and Jim Ryan, you know, they were all very close.
Yeah, they were the inner circle. They sure were.
And very different people, each one of them. You know?
Yeah, and yet the mechanics of all of them seem to gel together.
Well, they could all do their own things in the best possible way.
In the best way, yeah. Great. We also have Maureen Ryan. Maureen is the wife of the late Jim, whom Jim Fahey spoke a little bit about earlier. Jim, of course, was a Westport man, Maureen, and you were from?
And I'm from Sydney, in Australia. Yeah.
Yes, but of course he was into flying all over the world. So
he was.
No surprise. Yeah.
That's where I met him. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about Jim and the relationship with the Monsignor.
Yes. Well, they were very close, of course, and wherever Monsignor went, he invited Jim. And I think there were kind of a contrast, and maybe Monsignor could relax more with Jim. You know, he'd always be good for a laugh. But the thing about Jim was that he always liked the personal touch, and he liked nothing better than meeting all the people coming off the aircraft, the passengers, and welcome them to Knock Airport. And of course, he'd have a few words to say with them. And you know, people even today will come up to me sometimes and say, do you know, I remember Jim in the airport and how he always had a great welcome for us. And then I remember that trip they were talking about to Australia. Monsignor was invited out to open the Cairns airport. And of course he invited Jim to go with him. So they had a great time. And they were great ambassadors. And I think there's a play written about them, which we won't mention. But the most special thing about Jim and Monsignor, I think, was the inaugural flight. And he invited a few people to come out to Rome with him on the inaugural flight. And when we were leaving and we were approaching the departure lounge, Jim called out to Monsignor to look up at the monitor. And there in lights and in big letters was Knock Airport. Well, it was a very special moment, very special. And after all the hard work by everyone, by the meetings and the plans and the waiting, here it was a reality. So they were both overwhelmed.
And were there times, Maureen, in you and Jim's quieter moments that he'd say to you, this can never happen?
No. Jim was always an optimist, a little bit like Monsignor, and he was determined that it was going to work. And he actually was very busy. Remember sending him off every day to buy the land, and he would go up to the north, up here, and he would be meeting the farmers. No better person to sit in a farmer's kitchen over a cup of tea and talk them into selling their land, which they did. And here we are sitting on it now.
Isn't it great?
Yeah.
Isn't it mighty? Well, thank you to Jimmy and to Kieran and Maureen for sharing those stories of the Monsignor, of Cahill, and of course of Jim. The gentleman at the end is Paddy Judge. Paddy, you hold a record for Ireland West Airport Knock. Tell everybody why.
Well, I was part of the crew that operated the first flight into Knock Airport on behalf of Aer Lingus and out to Rome Ciampino Airport.
On that day in October?
On that day in October of 1985. I was with Jack Bagwell, and Jack was the captain, I was the first officer. He was the pilot on the way in, and the weather was not good, let's put it like that. It was kind of misty, given, so I suppose, a certain amount of credence to the foggy part of it. But we did a light down here over Oscar Kilo Beacon and then let out to the west. And there was a little house out there that had whitewashed gables on it that I had earlier identified as a good landmark to turn around, which we did. And then we came in and landed it because, I mean, there were no runway lights and there was no ILSs. And it amazed me today driving up into the airport here, passing by all these tall stanchions with the runway lights and Category 2 lighting systems. We would have loved to have had that on the day.
But it wouldn't have been as exciting if it was.
Not at all.
Yeah. And of course, you are from just down the road.
I am indeed. I'm down from Coolnaha, Turin.
Yeah.
And in my younger days, I served Mass for Father Horan, as I knew him at the time. He was a friend of my dad's, and I was born in London, where my mum and dad lived just after the war. And when he was raising money for the dance hall in Turin, he used to stay with them over there. So I think that Knock Airport is probably about the third or fourth project that he got involved in, because a number of people here have said he was a dreamer. And certainly my father didn't consider him like that. My father considered him as a man who identified the needs of his community and went out and addressed them through hell and high water. And if you call that dreaming, that's fine. But we need people like that today just as much as any other time.
And it's quite obvious that he circled around him people who were in themselves optimists. He didn't want the negative stuff, so obviously the likes of Cathal and Jim and others were so important to him. Were you nervous that day landing that plane that something could have gone wrong?
Not really, because I mean, you're a professional, and Jack was the chief training captain on the 737s, and I was assistant chief pilot line operations, which was a management position. So we were a heavy crew, as you know what we would describe. And essentially speaking, you've got a professional job to do, and you will do that. Yeah. And that's the way you're trained in Aer Lingus, and the standards that still exist today.
But the feeling when it touched down?
Well, you don't sort of, even at that time, it's like driving a car, until such time as you come to park it. You can look around at that point in time, and you do your landing checks, and then all of a sudden
So are you telling us that when a plane lands, it might still crash?
It can, yeah. Okay. They say the flight isn't complete until the airplane has come to a stop.
Okay, well, we'll remember that. Are you still involved in Aer Lingus now? Or?
No, I retired in 2004, and I went working with the Air Accident Investigation Unit in the Department of Transport.
Great. Okay, well, listeners, thank you all for sharing those lovely stories with us of the Monsignor, of Cathal, of Jim, and of landing that first aircraft. Paddy, thank you very much indeed as well. Now, we're going to move on because we have more greetings for you now from people who can't be here tonight. In a few moments, we will have Michael O'Leary, the big boy from Ryanair, O'Brien, and Aer Lingus' Stephen Kavanagh. We'll go to that one.
On behalf of us all here at Aer Lingus, I'm delighted to be able to extend our heartiest congratulations on reaching the 30th anniversary milestone of operations at Ireland West. Aer Lingus was with you from day one, the first airline operating at Knock, and we continue today with our daily service to London, and indeed we're looking forward to our Boston service during the summer. So congratulations to all who've been involved in what's a tremendous success story. The vision and ambition has lived through creative and hard work over many years, and we wish you continued success over the next 30 years.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael O'Leary. I'm the big boss of Ryanair. I'm sorry I can't be with you all in Knock this evening, but we're on our full year results roadshow, and I'm probably somewhere over the Atlantic as you're wining and dining this evening. On behalf of myself and all of the team here at Ryanair, I want to congratulate each and every one of you as you celebrate Knock's 30th birthday. It's been some roller coaster ride over the last 30 years. Ryanair is proud to have played a key role in the development of Knock. Without us, I think Knock wouldn't have survived the 30 years. And in many cases, without Knock's help, Ryanair wouldn't have grown to become the success it's been today. We're very proud of the fact that I think this summer we'll operate 12 routes to and from Knock. We'll account for maybe 70-80% of Knock's traffic, which I understand this year will break a new record as well. So to Joe and all the rest of the team in Knock, keep up the good work. Enjoy yourselves this evening. Don't drink too much because there's a busy programme of flights there tomorrow. And here's hoping that Mayo finally wins Sam Maguire this year. If they do, we'll certainly be happy to fly the team back to Knock in September. So have a great night, and from all of us in Ryanair, a very sincere and heartfelt thank you. Well done, and here's to the next 30 years of cooperation between Ryanair and Knock.
Hi, I'm Ed O'Brien, and want to congratulate and wish 30th anniversary best wishes to Knock Airport on the anniversary. Been involved for a number of years myself. Actually, my mother was born down the road, so we watched it grow up. We watched it develop. We were here in 1985 to see Monsignor Horan go off to Rome with the 3 first Aer Lingus flights. And then in 1986, my brother and I and our families, along with my mother, arrived in on the first flight, Transamerica from New York, first transatlantic. And after arrival, of course, we met Monsignor Horan, who greeted everybody. And the highlight for us personally was my mother walked off down the road to Bamacogue, to the home she was born and raised in. So every continued success to Knock Airport.
Thanks there to Ed and to Michael O'Leary and also to Stephen. Now, more music for you, ladies and gentlemen. We're delighted to keep this as Mayo-based and West of Ireland-based as possible. Here's a group that were formed back in 2000. They've up to 50 members, mainly based in the Ballina and surrounding areas, and they've travelled all over Ireland, the UK, even been to Romania. And they're going to do 2 pieces for us this evening under the musical directorship of Tara Doherty and accompanied by Tony Kelly. Would you please welcome from Ballina the Rejoice Gospel Choir.
Black is the color of my true love's hair. Her lips are like some roses fair. She's got the sweetest smile and the gentlest hands, and I love the ground whereon she stands. I love my love, and well she knows. I love the ground whereon she goes. I wish the day it soon would come when she and I can be as one. Black is the color of my true love's hair. Lips are like some roses fair. She has the sweetest smile and the gentlest hands, and I love the ground whereon she stands. I go to the Clyde, and I mourn and weep, and satisfied I never can be. I write her letters, just a few short lines, and I suffer death 10,000 times. Black is the color of my true love's hair. Her lips my true love's hair. Her lips are like some roses fair. She's got the sweetest smile and the gentlest hands, and I love the ground whereon she stands, and I love the ground whereon she stands. Far away from the land of the shamrock and heather, in search of a living as exiles we roam. Whenever we chance to assemble together, we think of the land where we once had a home. Historic Gala, from Swinford to Gala, Ballyhornis and Westport and Oldcastle Bar, Kilchama and Claremorris, Belmullet and Erris, Kilkelly and Knock, that is fame near and far. Boys stick together in all kinds of weather. Show the white feather wherever you go. Just be like your brother and love one another. Stout-hearted men from the county Mayo. From historic Gala, from Swinford to Gala, Ballyhornis and Westport and Oldcastle Bar, Kilchama and Claremorris, Belmullet and Erris, Kilkelly and Knock, that is fame near and far. Bala, Ballina, Ballindina and Mahola, Keelogs and Foxford a few miles below. Newport and Cong with Old Strait and Manila, Charlestown too in the county Mayo. Boys stick together in all kinds of weather. Show the white feather wherever you go. Just be like your brother and love one another. Stout-hearted men from the county Mayo. From Galway to Dublin, from Derry to Kerry, New York and Frisco and Boston also. Pittsburgh, Chicago, Detroit and Toronto, there are stout-hearted men from the county Mayo. Boys stick together in all kinds of weather. Show the white feather wherever you go. Just be like your brother and love one another. Stout-hearted men from the county Mayo. Boys stick together in all kinds of weather. Show the white feather wherever you go. Just be like your brother and love one another. Stout-hearted men from the county Mayo.
Yes, indeed, the Rejoice Gospel Choir there, and thank you very much indeed. And I hope you liked the little sound effect we put into the first song. We are in an airport, after all. Jerry Glennon has more people for us to talk to now. Jerry, over to you very quickly.
Indeed I have, Tommy, and I have to say that was the first time I saw Minister Michael Ring absolutely scared out of his wits, because the musical director, in her enthusiasm, shot a couple of arms over Ring, and he had to duck 2 or 3 times during the course of that, boys from the County Mayo. But he's still alive and well. We still have a minister alive. I want to talk to John Dillon, because John Dillon, of course, is a man that was a travel agent for many, many years, now retired travel agent, and it's also fair to say the longest serving director of Ireland West Airport, and we're delighted to have him here this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a huge round of applause. 30 years and plus service. John, would you take me back to those early days, if you please? Because surely 1985, 1986, 1987, 1989, as Terry Riley suggested in his book, it literally had to be on a wing and a prayer.
There's no doubt about it, Jerry. But before we get started, I could say that Michael Ring isn't in a ring yet.
I'm sure he'll answer that one later on himself when he's on the panel. Those early days, John, a wing and a prayer.
Yes, but I lived under 6 chairmen in that length of time from 86. And every single chairman and every single member of that board, in the tough days, in the days when we had to go to UK, to meetings, every one of the members did it at their own cost. And that's the way it was done. I remember several times going to meetings, and one particular one that I went with the Monsignor in Dublin. There was a bad accident on the way going into Dublin, and we had to go through the strawberry beds. And in doing so, we had to go in through the Phoenix Park. So I was letting her out because we were late. And when I arrived at the gates coming out, this big, fine guard came up and said to me, "You're speeding." I said, "I am, sir. I'm late for a meeting." Well, he said, "You shouldn't be driving that fast. And have you a driver's license?" I said, "No." "Have you got your insurance?" I said, "No."
There's 6 points straight away.
"Can anyone identify you?" "Yes, I can identify you." "The man, what's your name?" "My name is James Horan." "Ara, James Horan, is that you?" "It is." He said, "I was down in Knock 3 weeks ago and enjoyed myself, and I'm delighted to meet you. I let you go, and only for this man you wouldn't go." He said that's the type of voice that he had and the command he had when he was required.
But John, in those early years, were there some hairy days? Were there times when you showed up at board meetings where number one item on the agenda was there may not be enough money to survive here for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months?
That was true, very true. And that get back to Frank Harrington and people like him. Frank, I remember another day with Frank outside the door, and I was in having a meeting and a discussion with the Monsignor about that particular thing called money. And Frank Harrington, he said he's outside looking for money. What will we do? And I said, send him home and tell him come back tomorrow. And Frank had a discussion with the diplomat of the day, that was Jim Ryan. And the discussion took place, and the next thing Frank said, I'll be here tomorrow, if not on Friday. And this was on a Wednesday. So the Monsignor got into his Carina with Jim driving, and they went off up to the Mullingar area. And they came back with money. And that money was the money that kept Frank Harrington from going to the bank.
There was always rich pickings in the Midlands. John Dillon, it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Long may your reign. Here's Liam Scollin. Liam, of course, a former CEO of Ireland West Airport in Knock. Liam, it's fair to say you were here for the middle years. What were the middle years like?
Well, the middle years, they were very lucky years, really, because we were just coming out of the time of the high-cost flights. At that time, BA City Express were doing flights, and they were enormously expensive, maybe £250 return from Knock. So these were very difficult years, these early 10 years, if you like. And, I wanted to take this opportunity to actually thank the board and people like John Dillon, John Mahan, and all those people who were there at that time, because although the airport wasn't growing in those first 10 years, there was huge tenacity. And the introduction of the development fee by that board at that time was one of the things that actually kept the airport alive when there wasn't the big numbers coming from the low-cost airlines. So, I mean, I wouldn't like to have this opportunity and not let it pass without thanking those people for making those tenacious decisions at that time. I mean, the middle 10 years that I was here, people often ask me, what is knock, you know, if it was abroad or something like that. And I would say, well, look, knock is not just an airport, it's a state of mind. I mean, what I mean by that is, I mean, in several ways, not only have we heard about Monsignor tonight, but that sort of spirit lived right on through and in the years I was here. I'll give you one example of a security man one day, one of our security staff at the airport. And it was a Sunday, and I happened to be upstairs doing something. And he came up to me and he says, do you know what, Liam? He says, there's a minister flying through on a private aircraft today. And he doesn't really want to be seen flying through. He says, it's a private visit. But he says, would you like to meet him? I says, of course I would, you know. And in order to push for the investment in the airport. Anyway, the minister was coming through and said to the security man, you know, oh, how good day, you know, it's a lovely day and all that kind of thing. Oh, it's a fine day. And how is the airport going on? And the security man says, it could be doing better, you know. Could be doing better. Well, anything I can do now, I will help. And he says, would you? And he says, right. He says, well, would you meet our CEO? And he says, of course I will meet him any time, you know. Just ask him to give me a ring. Oh, he says he can do more than that. He's actually upstairs. And that was an example of the sort of alertness of the staff here. I remember another occasion where the staff actually, you know, literally had to pull an aircraft across the runway because a part of the equipment wasn't actually working. Those were the things that I remember very fondly, that huge spirit of tenacity. And the other thing that I think, and there was a lot mentioned about the foggy, boggy airport there early on, and we were heavily criticised for that. And one of the reasons for that was that we didn't have Category 2 status, that which allows aircraft to land during low cloud. And one person I'd love to mention tonight is not with us anymore, is John Carty, former TD. I remember John coming to me one day and saying, Liam, he says, you know, I have one big aspiration in my political career, and that is to make a difference for Knock Airport. And I would say that John worked hugely hard in convincing the government that he was a part of at that time in delivering 17 million of investment into the airport, and part of that investment led to the delivery of Category 2 status, which actually got rid of forever the foggy, boggy story, if you like.
It put that myth to bed.
It put the whole myth to bed, and I think, you know, there were great years because the low-cost airlines were coming in, and one of the airlines that made a big difference in those early times was Be My Baby. We had Ryanair, they were making a huge difference, but Be My Baby was on course, and at one stage they agreed 5 flights with us at one time. Now, not all got delivered, but it was a huge impact. My Travel Light was another airline by Tim Jeans, who managed it, formerly Ryanair. Those early low-cost airlines, as well as Ryanair, made a huge difference and really put us on the European map. But behind all that, I couldn't say it enough to you tonight, Jerry, and that is that when times were tough and things mightn't be going well or whatever, I would always remember not just Monsignor Horan. I never met the man because I was living in England at the time, but I would remember the people working here, the staff, and the attitude that they had. And that's why I've always said that it's more than a place, it's more than an airport, it's a state of mind.
That can-do attitude.
That can-do attitude that was there, and I want to pay tribute to that tonight.
You've done that admirably. Liam Scollin, thank you very much indeed for talking to us, former CEO. Now, Mick, we'll move over this direction, if you please, just for a minute, because I see Archbishop Michael Neary here from Tuam, and it would be remiss not to have a few words with the Archbishop. Archbishop Michael, I want to ask you about your memories of Monsignor James Horan when you were a young priest in those days. It isn't now indeed that you're an old Archbishop tonight, but nevertheless, your memories of Monsignor James in those days.
Well, Monsignor James was a giant, and he brought other giants on board with him. He never contemplated failure, and when things were getting tough, his enthusiasm was infectious, because I remember my late mum and dad were steward and handmaid at Knock, and I recall them going out taking gate collections on Sunday mornings and for the airport when the airport was going through a tough time. He had also a facility to cope with criticism that was sometimes unfairly channeled in his direction. On one occasion, an interviewer said to him, Monsignor, you have been described as a pious rogue. And he looked at the interviewer with a glint in his eye and said, I'm not that pious.
Do you ever say to yourself, though, in some moments of reflection, phew, thank God I wasn't his boss?
I think I would have enjoyed working with him. I was a very young priest at the time. I remember my first Sunday after ordination coming over to say a few prayers in thanksgiving at Knock. The Monsignor spotted me and he said, you go into the confession box now, he said. And I said, well, I'm not sure if I would know the formula. It was in Latin at the time. He said, if you don't know it going in, you know it coming out.
And I'll bet you remember that formula too. Archbishop Michael Neary, thanks for talking to us.
I emerged 3 hours later.
Unscathed. Thank you very much, Archbishop Michael. So Mick, we'll come over here. There's one more special lady that I want to have a few words with, and then I'll hand it over to Tommy. And this lovely lady in the second row is Anya Mahan, the lovely Anya Mahan. And Anya Mahan is the wife of a much loved and much respected and much missed former director here at Airline West Airport in Knock, John Mahan. Anya, my question for you is, do you remember the day that your husband came home to you and said, Mrs., we're going to be involved in an airport?
Yes, I do, Jerry, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, he was very proud of the airport, and he was right behind Monsignor Horan in his goal for an airport to be built. And he loved his time as on the board of Knock Airport, and before he was appointed Knock Airport, he gave a year of his life voluntary to help build the different buildings that was going up at the time, and I kept the show on the road at home, so that was it.
What do they say? There's a song at the moment that says, the woman behind the man behind the wheel. So you were the woman behind the man behind the wing on those days. Before I send you on your way tonight, Anya, I just have one more question, because John, in fairness to him, was such a hands-on man. I remember coming to this airport in the early days, and John, we all know that John had an accident and he spent the latter number of years in a wheelchair, but he was always here. He had such a passion for this place.
He absolutely loved it, Jerry. He did, and loved the people involved in the airport, and he had a great time for all the staff as well. He really thought an awful lot about them, and they worked very well here, and he also got on very well with everybody, you know. So, and also he had a great time for Liam Scullin and for Michael McGrath.
Indeed. Well, look, it's lovely to talk to Anya. Lots of memories, some happy, some sad going through your mind, but it's great to see you here tonight. Thank you very much indeed. And with that, we'll hand it back to Tommy.
Thank you, Jerry. Now, a real treat for you, because when we were putting this program together, one of the people that we said was on our hit list to be here tonight was Christy Moore. But sadly, Christy couldn't be here because he's on a nationwide tour at the moment. But when he heard we were doing this special program to the Monsignor and to the 30th anniversary of the airport, he made arrangements for us to go and record him. He was actually playing in the Landmark Hotel in Carrick-on-Shannon about 3 weeks ago. So we took a little camera crew along and we went up to Christy Moore's little bedroom, his little boudoir, and he wanted to talk a little bit about the Monsignor and also to perform a special song. So have a look. This is what happened.
My story begins really with the Knock song back in 1965. I was working in the National Bank in Ballyhonus, and that's where the father used to make his lodgements from the ballroom. And many's the Monday, Tuesday morning, I counted his coinage out after the great dances in Turin. And then 20 years on, I was always intrigued by Knock Airport as it was built. And anytime I was playing in Mayo, I used to drive up onto Bamacogue and drive in onto the site where the airport had been built. And actually, in fact, a few nights I even slept there. And one night I was there and I just started ruminating about the whole thing. At the early age of 38, my mother said, go west. Get up, says she, and get a job, says I, I'll do my best. I pulled on me Wellingtons to make for Kilchamack, but I took a wrong turn in Charlestown and ended up in Knock. Oh, once this quiet crossroads was a place of gentle prayer, where Catholics got indulgence once or twice a year. You could buy a pair of rosary beads or get your candles blessed. If you had a guilty conscience, you could get it off your chest. Then came the priest from Part 3, Father Horan was his name. Ever since he's been appointed, Knock has never been the same. Be God, says Jem, 'tis 80 years since Mary was a doubt. 'Tis time for another miracle, he blew the candle out. Off from Fatima to Bethlehem and from Lourdes to Kilchamack. Well, I never seen a miracle like the airport up in Knock. To establish terra firma, he drew up a 10-year plan, and he started running dances around 1961. He built a basilica upon the holy ground, and once he had a focal point, he started to expand. Chip shops and bed and breakfasts sprung up overnight. Oh, once a place for quiet retreats, now a holy site. All sorts of fancy restaurants for every race and creed, where black and white and yellow pilgrims could get a mighty feed. We had the Blessed Virgin here, Father Horan did declare. Foster and Alan appeared just over there. Do you mean to tell me, said James or to his flock, that we are not entitled to an old airport here to Knock? Oh, from Fatima to Bethlehem and from Lourdes to Kilchamack, I never seen a miracle like the airport up in Knock. TDs were lobbied and harassed with talk of promised votes, and people who had been loyal for years spoke a change in coats. Excommunication was threatened upon the flock, who said it was irreverent building airports up in Knock. Now everyone is happy and the miracle it's complete. Father Horan got his runway, it's 18,000 feet. Pilgrims in their thousands descending down the steps, the old de Havilland aeroplanes and Virgin jumbo jets. Now poor old Father Jim has gone to the airport in the sky, and down on Bamacogue he keeps a friendly eye on Ryanair and Aer Lingus as they fly to and fro. We'll never see the likes again on the plains of sweet Mayo. From Fatima to Bethlehem and from Lourdes to Kilchamack, I never seen a miracle like the airport up in Knock. I'm sorry I can't be with you. I hope you're having a great time at this 30th anniversary celebration, and ride on, the whole lot of you up there in Knock Airport, and God bless.
And that is Christy Moore there, and that was recorded in Carrick-on-Shannon just a couple of weeks ago. Well, tonight we've been speaking about an awful lot of the close friends of Monsignor Horan over the years, the 30 years since this airport has been built. Somebody described them as the Holy Trinity. There was Charlie Haughey, and there was Albert Reynolds, and there was my next guest. He is part of the jigsaw of the success of this airport, and a West of Ireland man with a long and distinguished career, TD, Junior, Senior Minister, and of course, EU Commissioner. I can only speak of one man, Mr. Castlebar, Pádraig Flynn. How are you?
What has he got, if not himself?
I thought you'd like that. Pádraig, good evening. And thank you very much for joining us. You're looking great.
Ardús, Seosaf, Kilmore, but why some my week is a coronul did also tan kira a ve in enig live enough Is funra a glach mé leis an cire, haar bar mé héin, agus ma van céile Dorothy da an seochnam. Agus is tá civnacum, fear lehanagum, na cuasaí atá a phlé giving up. Thank you for your invitation. Your Grace, my neighbour, Archbishop Michael Neary, Bishop Rook, agus agin usually idir tua agus Clare. I have to first of all ask my Archbishop for forgiveness in advance of what I might say.
Oh no, you promised.
And I want to tell you, I gave a false promise already to this gentleman
Okay,
here.
there we go. Good night.
Come back here, I've changed my mind.
Okay.
About my memories going back over 30 and indeed more years than that. And being a very good friend and somebody who knew Monsignor James so well. Now, there are a few things being spoken about already this evening that are not accurate. So I'm going to have to put you all in a position where you know the real truth. But I'm going to do it now, not just immediately, because otherwise I'll have to leave. But I have to say to you that Knock Airport is something special to me. And it's something special to all of the people of the west of Ireland. Now, I'm sorry if I'm going to hurt anybody's feeling, but it's never been Connacht Regional Airport or Ireland West Airways to me. It's Knock Airport, it was always Knock Airport, and it will always be Knock Airport to me. And I'm sorry now if I'm going to detain you just a little further, and please, Your Grace, forgive me. But going back over the years, I often thought about Knock Airport and why it's here. And really, to me, it all started on the 21st of August, 1879. And that is when Our Lady appeared in Knock Shrine. 100 years later, the Pope came to Knock. There would be no airport if it hadn't been for the intervention of the Almighty. And because of that, Knock wasn't just a village, it's a place of pilgrimage to over 1 million people a year. And when Monsignor James came back from Glasgow and did his trick in Clonfad and Turin and came here, he came with a history of devotion. And my memory of Monsignor James is very simple. He was a calm man, and he was a man of great prayer. I'm going to tell you a few of the things that he was involved in politically, because he was up to his neck in it. And I happened to be the fortunate or unfortunate intermediary between him, Charlie, and all the other politicians of the day. And there is one memory I have, that from the very start, he was the mastermind of the development of Knock, the shrine, the basilica, and the airport. And he was a man of great prayer. I remember having to come to see him on many occasions because I was the Minister of State for Transport. And I used to come to see him in the presbytery. And we sat down 2 armchairs opposite each other. Occasionally, I had a little glass. But if I arrived before the appointed time, and Monsignor James was at prayer, I waited until his prayer session was complete and over. He was a man first of God. And I want to also express my thanks to see you, Michael, Ring here. And I also want to say hello to Lisa Chambers. You have my seat. Be careful with it. And of course, Senator Mulhern, congratulations to the whole lot of you for continuing on the representation of my county and the People's County here. Now, Monsignor James, Tommy, he was a pragmatist and he was an optimist. But was he determined? He knew what he wanted, and it wasn't just simply for pilgrimage purposes. He had a perfect understanding of the relationship between economic development and religious development. I was always pushing him on the latter, that I wanted the airport to represent the great opportunity to develop the pilgrimages to Knock Shrine, both from Europe and America. I still look forward to that development increasing over the years. And I have to say to you, it was a great thrill for me. You know the way you can remember certain days in your life, the day of your First Holy Communion, the day of your confirmation, the day you get married, all of these particular days. Well, on the 29th of September, 1980, a certain gentleman signed the Ministerial Order of Approval for the building of Knock Airport. And that person was Pádraig Flynn. The Transport Analysis International that was formed in 1980, Sean Balfe, God be good to him, was there, and it was he did the examination for the scheduling of services and the site location. And it was agreed the following few months that the services would be very difficult to support the building of an airport. And the site location, and very many of you here might not know it, there were 6 sites examined to see which one would be the most suitable. And in the end, it was Barnalyra, the top of the province. And Monsignor James, who else could do it? 480 acres negotiated by him with local farmers to allow the airport to be built. Have you any idea the kind of manipulation that took between the Monsignor and all the landowners in the area? And he did it all, and he did it all at a very judicial price. I'm not going to share it with you. But I can remember one thing. He didn't get them all, Tommy, because I was here in the airport when it was finished. And I was coming up along the road one day, and I saw a farmer climbing over the fence with a bicycle and cycling across the runway to do some farming on the far side. And I went to James and I said, my goodness, you have to stop this. He's the last one to be got, he said. But the 6 sites, yes, there was Balahi and Culmore and Mullaghrow and places like that, but they came down that this was the best one. And I want to put it on record now. I authorized McWilliam, the great meteorologist, to do the examination for the suitability of the airport, because it was suggested it was foggy and it was all that kind of thing. But in the analysis that came back to me, it was made quite clear, yes, there was some fog on the top of Barnalyra, but it made it quite clear that there was less here than there was in Cork Airport. That's enough for Minister Flynn.
Okay.
And so,
yeah.
wait a minute, I go on now.
Oh,
I have to finish this because otherwise now you mightn't give me the opportunity. And I have to say to you that, you know, you had Frank Harrington here. Are you listening, Frank? Because I have to say to you, you were something special. You were the best contractor and developer of that kind of construction in the whole of Connacht. And I'm going to give you credit for this reason. I asked my chief inspector of airports to come down and do an examination of the compilation of everything else insofar as the runway was concerned. And he came back to me, Frank, and he said, Minister, the compilation of Knock Airport runway is the equivalent of anything in Collinstown in Dublin Airport. Now, Jim was here and he talked about Paul Durkin. Do you want to hear the story, really? Well,
Go on.
All right.
I'm going to hear it
All
anyway.
right. All right. Now, what was I doing anyway except carrying out the orders of Charlie High? We had agreed in 1980 that yes, the airport was going to go ahead for the development of a gateway for Connacht. And it was chosen because of the alignment between the N5 and the N17. One going from the north down to Galway, and the other going from Castlebar as far as Dublin. And that is where the divide took place. And there were a lot of other airports, big and small, in competition. But we agreed, and the reason we agreed, because there was a special lunch between Monsignor James and Charlie High, and they agreed it was going to be in Knock. So, now difficulties arose. Oh, yes. And there was a question, a big question. I have to sort it out this evening because I'm never going to get the chance again. Because when I looked at some of the photographs on my photographic memorial wall at home, I wondered why I was invited here at all this evening, Tommy, and you explained it all, because you're the last man standing. All of the friends in those photographs have all passed on and gone to join Monsignor James in heaven. And we're talking about the county manager, Michael O'Malley, Dan O'Neill, Jim Ryan, and others. And I said, isn't it a terrible thing that we can't all live a little longer? But I want to tell you something, that it came to a decision now. This is a very tricky thing. It came to a decision put before me when, as minister, that there were three alternatives insofar as the development of the runway is concerned. Frank Harrington, you'd know this. And one was for 3,000 feet, and that was to be 1.4 million. And there was another for 5,000 feet. Now that short one would be just a short runway for small planes. Then there was the 5,000 feet, and it was 5 million. And that would be an add-on one for the future. And there was one at 7,000 feet, and it was to be 9.5 million. I took one look at it and I said, I came down to the Monsignor and we had that little cup of tea in the presbytery. And I was telling him about the variation and the money attachments to it. And he said, what do you think, Pádraig Flynn? Well, I think 8,000 feet so that we can bring in the big airlines from America. And he said to me, I agree with you. I'm not going to tell you now, Michael Ring, if the Taoiseach knew about that, or if anybody else in the department knew about it, but the deal was done. It was going to be an international airport, and that's what I wanted to be, because that's what Monsignor James and everybody that knew anything about airport development wanted it as well. Why? We wanted it to be a gateway for the west of Ireland. a gateway to deal with the Black Triangle. Nobody mentioned the Black Triangle this evening. That's the one that John Healy spoke about, one of your journalist friends, when he spoke about the middle of Connacht here, with Charlestown in the middle and all the towns round it, and the unemployment and the austerity and everything that was going on, that something needed to be done. And that was Monsignor James Horan's real determination to change the structure of employment and investment by building an airport that wouldn't just be for people going away, but for people coming in as well, and for tourism, and for the development of an industrial estate, oh goodness yes, close by to the airport, and for that linking that would take place between here and America as well. It hasn't happened yet, but I am still in the belief that it will happen in my lifetime.
Pádraig, I'm here.
Thank you, Tommy.
Well done. Can I ask you, did some of the decisions you make cost Fianna Fáil or cost Fianna Fáil seats or even a government?
Yes. Listen now, there was a difficulty. But I have to say this much in advance of making this statement, that before the election of 1980, both Charlie Haughey and Garrett Fitzgerald gave a commitment to the building of Knock Airport. Now, in 81, Tommy, in 81, things got very difficult insofar as economic terms are concerned. And I'm afraid a telephone call was made to the Monsignor on the 3rd of December 1981 to say that as soon as Frank Harrington had to take out of the soil and the bog and replace it with the gravel that he knew where it was, as soon as that was done, the money stopped. That was on the 3rd of December, 81. On the 3rd of December, I got a phone call. And on the 4th of December, myself and Albert Reynolds came down and joined Monsignor James, and we went out on that piece of ground that Frank Harrington was building. And the famous picture is told of it. We gave a guaranteed commitment that on the return to power, the money would be provided to finish Knock Airport, and it was.
Right. Okay, you said you had to get a lot of things off your chest.
Aye.
So how's your chest feeling now?
Well, you know, I'll tell you about it. Monsignor James was born in 1911. He was ordained in 1936. And he came back to Knock in 1963. And Dorothy Tynan married me the same year. So my chest is perfect as a consequence.
Good job. Last question. If Monsignor is looking down on you tonight,
yes,
what do you want to say to him, apart from vote Fianna Fáil?
No, well, listen to me. Listen to me. Monsignor James, when I said he was a holy man, I meant it. He was an optimist. He was a man of determination. And he had a great understanding. And I wanted to correct one thing before I answer that last question of yours, because it was about Paul Durcan. Paul Durcan was invited to do a poem for the opening in May of 85. Was it 86? Because the first flight to Rome was in 85. And in 86, the opening on the 30th of May. And he arrived into Leinster House, and Haughey was very busy, and as was quite usual, Flynn go down and deal with Paul Durcan. So I went, Paul Durcan was waiting, I went down, how are you, Paul? Great. He was a Castle barman, just lived outside of town. He said, Charlie Haughey wants you to do this poem. Oh, I'm going to do it. I have it ready. Oh, good, says I. Give me a look at it. Oh, I will not give you a look at it, he says. I will give a look at it to Mr. Haughey. Okay, I went up to High. Paul is here, he has the poem, and he wants you to see it. Go down and check it, Flynn. Back I went down to Paul Durkham, and I said to him, Paul, yeah, can I have a look at it? No, oh, no. Well, look, just get me have a look. Is it a short poem, like a sonnet? Stupid Flynn said, is it like a sonnet or a few stanzas? What do you mean, he said, Porrick Flynn. It is not that kind of poem at all. Oh, my God. It's reasonably short. No, it's not. It's a big, long poem. Oh, right, wait till I go down again. Down I go to High again. I said, will I send him up to you? Do not send him up. Well, I said, it's a very short poem. Well, if it's a short poem, just clear it. It'll be all right. So back I went down to Paul. I said, Paul, he's extremely busy. He cannot see you now. But I said, I'm authorized to clear it. Oh, good. Well, we came down to the opening here. And do you remember it? There were thousands here. And it was a sea of umbrellas while the rain came down and lashed us all, right? And it was going on, and Paul was going on, mentioning every single village in the county, and we were all saying, pray for us, and it was colossal. And he said to me, I thought you said it was a short poem. Well, it is a short poem. It's a Mayo poem. But I have to say to you this much. Paul Durkin, oh God, Paul, forgive me for saying this. He turned around and said to me on the stage out here, he said, well, I'll tell you one thing, he says. It's a great success, this airport, despite the pedigree economists and the calculator and the sophists of Dublin and the Pale. Wasn't it a marvellous saying? And consequently, I have to say to you, on the day, and I'll finish with this, on the day that Monsignor was going on the plane to Lourdes, I was here. I joined him. I didn't go to Lourdes now, but I was here in the departure lounge. And we talked over in the corner of the departure lounge for quite some time, just the two of us. And the announcement was made, Monsignor Horan, you're needed now to depart on that departure lounge. We took no notice. It was said a second time. Mr. Dillon, I think you were behind all this. The second time, and Monsignor Horan, we need you to come now immediately. And I said, don't worry about it. And so we were talking there, and in the end, an official came over and said, Monsignor, you really must come now. And I turned and said to him, never forget it. Monsignor James, take your time. He'll call you soon enough. That was the last words I ever said to Monsignor James. He came back from Lourdes in a coffin, the first to come in to knock by that way. And I have to say to you, he's watching us tonight, and he's watching over Knock Airport, and it'll always be Monsignor James Horan, mastermind of Knock Airport. Thank you.
Thanks, Porrick. Well said. Thanks, Neil. Thank you, Porrick. Well done. All the best. There you are. Thank you. That wasn't too bad, actually, considering that was. Thank you very much indeed, Porrick, for joining us. Now, we're almost near the end, but we just wanted to talk about the future of the airport before we go, and we have a fantastic finale for you coming up, ladies and gentlemen, in a little while. But first, we're looking for a new anthem for the airport, so we went to Jerry Carney, wonderful singer-songwriter, and we said, Jerry, any chance of a new song for Ireland West Airport Knock? And he said, absolutely no problem at all. So we're giving it its first hearing tonight. It's called I Never Thought I'd See the Day. Would you welcome, please, Jerry Carney.
Thank you. There was a dream that man would fly from yonder hill up to the sky, close to Knock and Charlestown would be the jewel in Connacht's crown. Still he dreamed and saw it through, notwithstanding much ado. Still he believed, but who'd have known it would be that dream that flew him home.
20,000 feet below isn't very far to go. Flying over Dublin Bay, you'd see it clear in a good day. Fasten seatbelt sign is on, the captain said it won't be long. Close to Knock in Charlestown, on yonder hill he'll take us down. I never thought I'd see the day I'd hit the tower in this wrong way. Walk through the arrival zone, in half an hour I'll be home. It sure is good to be back home. A foggy hill is what they said. Forget it, sir, your dream is dead. No aeroplane will ever land, and it was hard to understand. With big machines and many men, the likes we'll never see again. Cut the sod and pave the way for the jewel that is ours today. I never thought I'd see the day I'd hit the tower in this runway. I walked through the arrival zone, in half an hour I'll be home. It sure is good to be back home. Now 30 years and all is well, time and history will tell. International NOC, my God, it's such a sight to see. 2 aeroplanes all set to fly, make our mark up in the sky. Wherever we are gonna go, we'll start the trip here in Mayo. I never thought I'd see the day I'd hit the tower on this runway. I walked to the arrival zone, in half an hour I'll be home. Sure is good to be back home. Sure is good to be back home. All aboard and off the ground, in the air and Connacht bound, to take us to that yonder hill, the dream's alive and living still. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That was Jerry Carney there, and I never thought I would see the day. Thanks if you've just joined us on Midwest and indeed live on the World Wide Web. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed our 30th anniversary celebration here at Ireland West Airport in Knock. Now, I mentioned about the future of the airport because we think it's very important before we finish to talk a little bit about the future and what lies ahead for the airport in the years to come. And I suppose Peter Hines, who of course is the CEO of Mayo County Council. Peter, I suppose sometimes people forget the importance and the contribution that a county council has in an airport like this. So maybe it's important to tell the public what the council's part is in all of this.
Well, just listening to the celebration, Tommy, as we've been for the last couple of hours and just reminiscing about the people who were involved. The name of Michael O'Malley was mentioned, and he was one of Monsignor's right-hand men. He was my predecessor as county manager at the time. And Desman, who's with us, I think, took up the cudgels and served here as a member of the board for a very long time. I think the guts of 20 years, Joe Byrne and so on. So there's a tradition of the local authorities being involved. And just to correct one bit of misinformation that I think Mr. Fahy may have put into circulation, the doubt about planning permission. One of the great sources of pride of our senior planning officer, Sean Dunleavy, when he retired, he told the story of the planning permission for the airport being turned around in 2 days. It was a time when planning was much more efficient than it could possibly be now. So, yeah, we've been involved all the way through, and I think one of the things that is most important about just right now is that there were a number of Cahill from other local authorities at the celebration and chief executives, and the 7 local authorities in this region, that's Galway City and County, Roscommon, Leitrim, Sligo, Donegal and ourselves are coming together to even increase our involvement with the airport. We're buying a chunk of the airport, we're buying a stake in the airport. That's almost done, so that what has been an airport for the region will now be an airport for the whole of the Northwest. We're all bought into it, and there's been complete political buy-in, complete support across the spectrum, including from government, and that's an important step for the promotion of tourism in this whole region. It's the next 30 years, I think, are going to be even brighter than the 30 that have gone by.
Sitting beside you, Peter, is Minister Michael Ring. Economic rural affairs sounds to me you might have a few bob to give away.
Well, I hope so, Tommy. In the last role I was in, we had a few
certainly
bob,
did.
and we didn't spare it for the county or the country, and I was delighted on that occasion. to devise, I suppose, a number of schemes, particularly regional schemes, that we have such fine supporting facilities in this county and in rural Ireland. And when I was into that job, I looked to see what was happening around the country. I saw there was a lot of facilities, particularly in the cities. Rural Ireland weren't getting the same share of the national cake. I set up a number of schemes, and I'm hopeful now with this new portfolio that I have, I suppose, excuse the pun, I'll be setting up a lot of pilot schemes, and the pilot schemes will be starting in Mayo. So I intend to do that because it is a very important brief. Rural Ireland is in great difficulty at the moment. We're all working towards trying to get people employed, trying to get people to live in rural Ireland, trying to provide services for rural Ireland. The big issue that I'll be faced with in the next number of years, particularly with broadband, we do need broadband. We need it in every corner of this county, in every corner of rural Ireland, and that's one of the issues that we're faced with. And many, many other challenges, and this will probably be a more difficult brief than the last one I had. I see Niall Gibbons here tonight, and Niall was the Chief Executive of Tourism Ireland. I worked very closely with him for the last 5 years. And on many, many occasions, Niall and myself, we set up initiatives to support this airport. We set up many, many drives to try and get people into this airport. Some of them worked very well, some of them may not have worked so well, but at least we tried, and we put funding in that was, funding that we couldn't go telling people about, because there has to be equality across the country in relation to the regional airports. But at government level, we're working at ways and means now to try and make sure that we get people back into rural Ireland again. And I suppose this is the first government in many, many years that has a specific department now dealing with rural affairs. And it's my job now, along with Heather Humphreys, to make sure that I'll work, and will be working across departments to make sure that we get our fair share of the national cake. Broadband is the number one issue, and I think it's an issue that we have to try and deal with, roll out as quickly as possible. Not going to be simple, Tommy. I'll be working with Peter Hines, the local authorities, not alone the local authorities here in Mayo, but around the country, to make sure they're ready when the contracts are signed to roll it out as quickly as possible, and we'll have to do that. And as I say, we'll have some other initiatives out there to try and introduce a few new schemes to try and encourage and help and support people living in rural Ireland. And recently, when I read an article in the Sunday Independent, and I saw a former Secretary General of a department, and some of the comments he made about rural Ireland, it's no wonder we are where we are. When I was at meetings, at cabinet meetings, you were fighting against this all the time. It's all about the big numbers where the people are, but we have to also think about where the people, maybe not such numbers, but where the people are as well in rural Ireland. That's my job now, and I intend to do that over the next number of years. And if I can do what I did in relation to the Wide Atlantic Way, in relation to the gathering, in relation to the sporting facilities that we delivered in this country, particularly in rural Ireland, if I can do it after 5 years, like I was over the last 5 years, I'll be very proud if I can do whatever I can. And I can give you one commitment, I'll put everything into it, and I won't be one bit ashamed to say that I come from rural Ireland, proud of rural Ireland, and I want to make sure that we get our fair share of the national cake.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. This is, for the audience who don't know, this is Joe Gilmore. Joe is the Managing Director of Ireland West Airport Knock. Joe, I know a lot of work has gone into tonight, and terrific. For your staff have been absolutely amazing to us here, and I know they've been really buying into the idea of making sure that this landmark is really, really well celebrated. Looking forward to the next 5-10 years, where do you see the development? Have you reached a peak, or do you think it can get even bigger?
Well, Tommy, I suppose just before I answer that tonight, I'd just like to take up the point in terms of the staff here and this landmark, this 30th anniversary. When we tried to come up with ideas to market, we wanted to have it here at the airport. And, tonight I'm looking around here, especially the view you've got all night, it's absolutely phenomenal and amazing. And the dinner we had upstairs. So I just want to say a very big thank you to my staff, because without them, none of this would have been possible here tonight. And I will answer your question. My second comment was just all the contributors that partook tonight when we were trying to arrange it and calling people. Everybody was delighted to participate. We had some reservations, to be honest, because when you start to dig back through the archives, and especially when you go back into the archives of here, there's, I won't say many cupboards to open and so forth, but people were fantastic, and I think the contributions they gave tonight, I just want to say from an airport point of view, it's been tremendous. In terms of looking forward, we have a 10-year plan together. We're driving to try and double the numbers passing through the airport to well over 1 million passengers. We're driving to get investment into the airport, starting with the local authorities and other agencies that we can get funding from to take equity shareholdings in the airport, to really strengthen the balance sheet of the airport so we can attract new airlines, new routes. It's a very competitive market out there, but there's great support across the region and from the various stakeholders, from government, from the various agencies. So it's our ambition to try and keep working hard. And with the support we're seeing here tonight from all the various people that have contributed, I'm confident we can achieve that.
A lot of people, the one thing that they keep asking is, are we going to have flights to America? I won't ask you that. I'll ask that to Father Richard, because Richard, you've already delivered a few flights, Boston, of course, and there's one coming up very shortly. Are you going to find more for us?
We're slowly creeping our way along the east coast of the United States.
Bit by
so
bit.
Bit by bit. So last year we had the landing of the New York flight, and we worked very well, myself and Joe and the airport, the staff here at the airport, to make that a reality. And we had the wonderful cooperation of the Archdiocese of New York and Cardinal Dolan for that. This year we will, please God, on the 14th, leaving Boston on the 14th, arriving here in Knock on the 15th of July, will be Cardinal Sean O'Malley and the Mayor of Boston, Mayor Marty Walsh. And so they will be arriving in time for the national rededication of the Basilica in Knock. So that's what we want to do. We heard a lot about it tonight. We heard a lot about the need to grow this airport, not only towards Europe, but also towards the United States. That's what we want. And again, it is for both pilgrimage and both commercial reasons as well. We can do it. We've shown we're able to do it. And I know Aer Lingus are listening to us. So I know that they're going to become extremely good friends of ours in terms of flights to the United States. So, and that with government help and all the rest of it, we'll make that a reality because we want the commercials. We know we can do it. We know the people that will come in. They want to come in. They want to come in specifically here to the west. They want to come in between pilgrimage to the National Marian Shrine and also linking with that heritage that they have.
And Michael, Joe works tirelessly doing it, Father Richard does, and I'm sure, a government does as well. Is there anything at government level that can be done to literally twist the arms of an airline to say, look, give it a chance, fly into Knock from Boston and from New York and from Chicago, and we'll show you it works?
Well, I suppose, Tommy, really what government can do is, I suppose we can get them the nod, but at the end of the day, these make commercial decisions. Yeah. Aer Lingus make the commercial decisions. American companies make the commercial decisions. What we do is create the climate, and Niall Gibbons will tell you this. We have put initiatives in place to encourage airlines to come. We encourage them from Germany, we encourage them elsewhere, and that's all we can do. But what really makes a success, I suppose, of any airline is passenger numbers. And Father Gibbons will tell you this. I mean, the trip last year was a great success. I hope that again this year that we can show that more and more people will come from Boston and will come again to Knock. And if we can do that, I mean, airlines, operate like any business. If they see business there for them, they will operate. If they don't see business there, they won't operate. We can't force them, but we can encourage them, give them the nod. And sometimes they will respond and sometimes they won't. But it's all about being commercial. And if there's not a euro or a pound or a dollar out of them, they ain't going to come. So it's our job to make sure that we, and it reminds me of the gathering. When I went all over Britain and all over America, our diaspora are there. They want to support us, they want to help us. But sometimes we forget. We only use them when we want them. And we forgot about them in the good times. When the Tiger was flying around this country, we forgot about our diaspora. They were the very ones that responded to us again in relation to the gathering. And I believe that's what gave the tourism an initiative. A major boost was the gathering. And again, it was people like Peter Hines and the local authorities. When I was going abroad, I contacted the county managers in every county. They gave me the list of people from their counties. We brought them in to halls just like this tonight. We asked them, encouraged them to come to Ireland, and they did that. We have a big diaspora in America. What we need to do is get out there, advertise, work with Tourism Ireland, with Falch Ireland, to try and promote what we have here and try and encourage people to come. And of course, Tommy, let's be honest as well, a lot of this is about price. In the past, when our immigrants were returning, whether they were returning for weddings, funerals, or whatever the case may be, they were ripped off by the airlines. And what we need is competition within that, and to give people value for money, and they do need value for money. And, that's what it's all about.
Well, look, if we can deliver a Boeing 747 on water into Enniscrone, surely we can convince him to bring an airline from Aer Lingus in the air. So, mind you, it did take a Sligo man to do it, but we won't go there. Listen, last word to Father Richard. Richard, Knock Shrine really sounds to me like it needs the airport to survive. And you have a vision, don't you?
Yeah, we have embarked over the last 3 years on what we call Witness to Hope. It's the total, complete renewal of the National Marian Shrine. And that means bringing people in, that means renewing what we do and how we do it, which we have already done. We are practically 3/4 of the way through our project. It's an enormous project. It has seen the complete refurbishment of the basilica that James built as well in 1976, and this year we celebrate not only the 30th birthday of the airport, but the 40th birthday of the basilica. And so within 2 days of its original dedication, or 1 day, Tom Neary corrected me earlier on, of its original dedication, we will be rededicating it, and from the work that we've gone on. And I just want to acknowledge another person here tonight in the history of the airport that did a huge amount to consolidate what happened here after James died, and that's Monsignor Dominic Greeley. He put a huge amount of work into that. I know it. I know the files, I've read the history, and I see it there as well. So we rightly acknowledge James Horan and the vision and everything that made this real, but also the consolidation of Dominic Greeley that made this why we're here this evening as well.
Well done. Okay, thank you very much indeed to Peter, to Michael, to Father Richard and to Joe, and thank you very much for sharing your views about the future of Ireland West Airport in Knock. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately. I hope at home, if you've been watching it on the computer, you've enjoyed it, or on the radio at Midwest. We're going to leave you with our finale. Before I do that, if I start going to thanks to all the people who contributed to tonight's programme, both from the radio station or indeed from the airport here, we would be here all night. Suffice to say, personally, on behalf of all of the production team here, thank you to everybody who helped out. There are so many, as I say, it would be impossible to go through them all. But thank you also to Yvonne Kilcullen Events, because Yvonne was involved in the event management of tonight, and she made our job so much easier for the last couple of days when we came in and disrupted everything in the airport to get set up for tonight. We're going to leave you now. There is a birthday cake, and for the benefit of listeners on the radio, cutting a birthday cake or blowing out candles on the radio isn't great. But what I'm going to ask is, when we go off air after our finale, I'm going to be asking all of the people who are involved in our guest panels to come up, and we're going to have a gigantic cutting of the birthday cake here in the airport itself. Now, 2010, Terry Riley, Terry was with us earlier, came to me and he said, you know, this is going to be the centenary very shortly of the 100th anniversary of the birth of Monsignor James Horan, and I have an idea to write a drama musical based on the life of the Monsignor. And on that day, we conceived this idea of putting together On a Wing and a Prayer, the musical. And with the assistance of Cynthia Clampett from the Mayo Roscommon Hospice, we came together and we wrote a musical which raised an awful lot of money for hospice, but it also gave people the opportunity to come out and relive the wonderful life of the wonderful man that was Monsignor James Horan. So to finish our programme tonight, we asked the musical director, Lavinia Slater-Gilmartin, as I call her, but she goes as Lavinia Gilmartin these days, to actually do a concise version of On a Wing and a Prayer, the musical, for our audience tonight. And I think she has done an absolutely amazing job, as you're about to find out. From all of us here at Ireland West Airport in Knock, here's to the next 30 years, as we leave you with the cast of On a Wing and a Prayer. Ihoa.
Of a forthright man to build an airport was his great plan in this wild land, Miss Bogger Rock, with God's help within the side of Knock.
Cynics scoffed, it can't be done. Everyone knew where to come, and they meant it when they bring the rain. To this rating he would go. He did succeed, and he did win. For to giving up would have been such a sin. So let's follow his example with all our might as we listen to his story here tonight.
On the 5th day of May 1911, in the rural village of Parthree in County Mayo, a baby was born to parents Bartley and Catherine Horan, a little boy whom they named James. His proud parents nurtured and watched him grow into a bright boy, with foresight and imagination beyond his years. I wonder, could they have ever imagined the impact that their son James would have on hundreds of thousands of lives in the intervening 75 years?
When I grow up, I will be smart enough to answer all the questions that you need to know the answers to when you're a grown-up.
Come on, James.
Coming.
Oh, mover mountains, you shoulder the plow. Oh, mover of mountains, you planted the seed and you showed us how. He did succeed and he did win, for to giving up would have been such a sin. So let's follow his example with all our might as we listen to his story here tonight. As we listen to his story here tonight.
In 1936, James was ordained to the priesthood and his vocation realized. As a young priest, he worked for his parishioners and watched in dismay as they were forced to immigrate in search of a better life. This saddened him greatly.
The pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the flowers are dying. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valleys hush and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
Never one to be idle, Father James saw the opportunity a dance hall in Turin could bring, and he worked tirelessly to see it realized, even dancing with the devil, a small price to pay for its success. However, it was in 1967, when he was made parish priest of Knock Shrine, that he was driven on to even bigger things, in no small part, by a woman named Judy Coyne. She was to have a huge impact on what was about to happen.
I've come up with an interesting idea for the celebration of the centenary in 1979.
Really? And what would that be? I always get a little bit concerned when you come up with ideas, Mrs. Coyne.
Oh, well, perhaps on second thoughts, maybe it's a bit daft.
They said building dance halls was daft, but look what that did for the people.
No, it's nothing. We'll forget about it.
Out with it, woman.
Well, what about a papal visit?
What?
We'll invite the Pope to Knock to celebrate the centenary.
The Pope? To Knock? Interesting. I wonder, could it be done?
And the rest, as they say, is history. September 1979 saw Pope John Paul II come to Ireland and visit Knock as part of his papal visit. Monsignor James had achieved the impossible, but he didn't stop there. You see, he was convinced that so impressed was the Pope with his visit to Knock that he would return someday. And when he did, Monsignor James was determined that his plane would land at an airport in Knock.
Monsignor Horan, good to see you.
Jim, you're welcome.
Can you tell us exactly what's going on here?
We're building an airport, an international airport, but don't tell the Minister of Transport, because they know nothing about it.
Have you got official and full approval from the government for this?
More or less. Sure, we have permission from the Taoiseach, and he's a Mayo man after all.
How much money are the government putting into the airport?
Well, let's say they've given us enough to get going. Those who wait for the right time never find the right time.
Well, you've heard it here first. An airport on the side of a hill, the brainchild of the local parish priest. Jim Fahey, RTE News, Knock, County Mayo.
Come on, I'll show you around.
So it was, an airport in Knock, despite the government of the day withdrawing the funding. Monsignor Horan ploughed on, defying all the odds, raising the outstanding monies needed for a massive jumbo draw.
Hello, parochial house. This is Ellen, Monsignor Horan's housekeeper. Gay Byrne. As in the Late Show, Gay Byrne. Oh, Gay, how are you? You sound so different on the phone. What's that, Gay? No, Monsignor Horan is not here at the moment. No, he's down in Cork raising funds for our big jumbo draw. Yes. What's that? Oh, you'd like him to appear on the Late Show? Oh, well, I'll get him to call you on Monday when he comes back, Gay. Yes. Oh, and Gay, how would you like to buy a ticket for our big jumbo draw? What's that? Oh, you're very good. Yes, you can pay him whatever night he goes on the show. Oh, and Gay, how would you like to buy one for everybody in the audience? Oh, Gay, you're so good. What's that? Oh, the runway. Oh, it's looking good if I do say so myself. Yes. Well, we're almost there, Gay. Almost there. Bye, Gay. Ooh. Gay Byrne. Oh, la, 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 la.
What's our schedule like for next week, Mrs. Coyne?
Well, quite honestly, Father, I don't know how you're going to fit it all in. Do you realize the only free day you've got is Wednesday afternoon?
Look, you might have a word with Cathal Duffy. See, can he organise some of his friends? I want to see them for about an hour before that gala dinner.
Right.
And you want to get onto the printers and get more tickets printed for that draw.
Right.
I'd say Australia could be massive.
I don't know where you'll get your energy from, Father.
Ellen's tea and biscuits. You know, the last few pounds are always the hardest to raise, but we're almost there.
Almost there.
Now in his 70s, Monsignor Horan never faltered, always making himself available for television and radio appearances, attending fundraising functions and any event that promised a donation for the airport. However, away from the glare of the media hype, he was close to breaking point and turned to his ever-strong belief in Our Lady for guidance.
Who will help me see where I am going? Who will help me know what I must do? Now that things are tough and I feel I've had enough, who can I count on being by my side?
I will help you see where you are going. I will make you know what you must do. And when things are tough and you feel you've had enough, you can count on me being by your side. We will both join hands and we'll walk this road as one in the darkness of the night or the brightest morning sun. And when hope has all but died and there's no place left to hide, you can count on me being by your side.
Finally, the big day arrived, May 30th, 1986, the opening of Connacht Regional Airport. Monsignor Horan was jubilant in realising his dream and achieving the impossible. The following day, he led his faithful flock to pilgrimage to Lourdes. It was during this trip that the Lord chose to call James Horan home to rest. Ironically, his coffin was to be the very first to ever arrive to his beloved Knock Airport. In many ways, a fitting tribute to a man who lived his life on a wing and a prayer. Tonight, 30 years on, we salute you, Monsignor James Horan. You truly were a man of the people.
Someday in the future, a story will be told of a priest who walked a rocky road and turned its path to gold. He soared the clouds to shout out loud of our poverty, our pain. Now in the west of Ireland, we honor his great name. He was a man of the people who lit a candle in the wind, a man of the people. That flame burns brightly to the end, a man of the people who followed his elusive dreams, a man of the people. Though impossible his dreams did seem, not in a smile, a wink and a glance, he knew there'd be no second chance. A man of the people, Monsignor James Horan.
Someday in the future, a new song will be sung with lyrics and a melody about the things he done. His legacy in harmony, a rhyme in every line. That song will be an anthem called A Man Before His Time. He was a man of the people who lit a candle in the wind, a man of the people. That flame burns brightly to the end, a man of the people who followed his elusive dreams, a man of the people. Though impossible his dreams did seem, with a nod and a smile, a wink and a glance, he knew there'd be no second chance. A man of the people, Monsignor James Horan. Monsignor James, he grabbed the reins and immigration stopped. Built dance halls and an airport too, and he brought them home to Knock. Someday in the future, when history books are read, we'll document those incidents and quote the things he said. Words alone are cold as stone, the
chapters won't reflect his true amazing character, his kindness and respect. He was a man of the people who lit a candle in the wind, a man of the people, the flame burned brightly to the end, a man of the people who followed his elusive dreams, a man of the people, though impossible his dreams did seem. With a gun in his wide awake at a glance, he knew there'd be no second chance, a man of the people, Monsignor James Horan. He was a man of the people who lit a candle in the wind, a man of the people, that flame burned brightly to the end, a man of the people who followed his elusive dreams, a man of the people, though impossible his dreams did seem. The nod and a smile, a wink and a glance, he knew there'd be no second chance, a man of the people, Monsignor James Horan. Monsignor James
So thank you to the cast of On a Wing and a Prayer from 2010 to 2016. Well done, guys. And a terrific performance. Told you it was special. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Yeah, that was great. So thanks very much indeed to our cast. Now, we're gone off air, I hope, at this stage. So I'm just going to ask if I could, and this would be actually Henry Wills, I presume, is here. We want to take a photograph of this cake. Which is beautiful, and we want as many of the contributors tonight to our program to come on stage, and we have these kind of special candles that explode and do all sorts of stuff. So if we could just quickly get just as many people as possible who are on the stage tonight to come onto our stage. And by the way, audience, thank you for being so responsive and so attentive all night. You were absolutely... No, Jerry, you don't do that yet. Otherwise it causes... Yeah, we'll have to bring it up on stage. And we'll have to clear the stage. Jerry, I'd say he'd probably want all that space.
Somebody's from here, many of you read.
Oh yeah, he will.